First, let me thank you for those kind words for Costa Rica, Yuriko, and Francisco. Good morning, everybody. Rector of the University for Peace, Dr. Francisco Rojas Aravena, Yoriko Yasukawa, representative of the United Nations in Costa Rica, dear ambassadors and other members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the Council, teaching staff, dear students from around the world who honor this alma mater. I thank you for the invitation to accompany you at this stage of the academic endeavor, and would like to share with you some priority topics for Costa Rica at the 69th session of the United Nations General Assembly. The 69th session of the General Assembly will convene in New York on September 16, 2014. The general debate will open on Wednesday, September 24, 2014. In this assembly, Costa Rica actively promotes national priorities in the areas of peace and security, nuclear weapons, disarmament, and non-proliferation, the promotion of human rights and international rights, solutions to the economic and financial crisis, multilateral cooperation, socioeconomic and sustainable development, environmental protection, as well as actions to prevent and mitigate the effects of climate change, among others. Since the General Assembly is the ideal forum to deepen relations among the members of the international community, Costa Rica will continue to use this space for strengthening its international presence and promote international cooperation. Costa Rica will continue to support discussions on initiatives and decisions made by the General Assembly, the Security Council, that contribute to promote the protection of civilians, including women and children, offering humanitarian assistance to displaced people and refugees, contributing to disarmament, promoting international cooperation for economic and social development, and encouraging political dialogue and accountability in the area of human rights violations and international humanitarian law. Participation in regional groups, CELAC. Given national diplomatic priorities, Costa Rica actively participates in the Latin American and Caribbean group, CELAC, the Group of 77 and China, and the Central American Integration System, SICA. And we hold the position of President pro tempore during 2014 with a summit in January 2015 of CELAC. Likewise, Costa Rica will participate in informal groups and coalitions that, by having shared viewpoints and common positions, will develop better working strategies and proposals for action. For Costa Rica, like other countries, the comprehensive reform of the United Nations is important to strengthening the organization's ability to adapt to new needs and challenges in the international community. In particular, Costa Rica will participate actively in meetings on revitalizing the General Assembly and reforming the Security Council. In the case of the Security Council reform, Costa Rica maintains its position on the creation of new non-permanent seats and favors the efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability that the organization so needs. Within the Uniting for Consensus Group, UFC, Costa Rica maintains the following position: favors prudent expansion of non-permanent members with the possibility that some countries could remain for more than 2 consecutive years on the Council, considering that is the only practical way to make the Council more representative, legitimate, and flexible. Promotes a balance that will improve representation in some areas and regions. Costa Rica continues to advocate for greater and more fair participation from Africa, Asia-Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Favors a different representative configuration that will increase substantially the possibility of being elected to the Security Council, which will open more opportunities for small countries that represent a majority of the United Nations. Costa Rica is flexible with respect to the exact number that the new council should have. However, the country emphasizes that the total number with better representation should be able to perform efficiently. Accountability, coherence, and transparency group. A larger Security Council requires clearer, more predictable, inclusive, and systematic procedures. Costa Rica is part of the ACT group since 2012, which includes 23 members from all regions and is coordinated by Switzerland. This group analyzes and makes concrete proposals to review the working methods of the Security Council in order to make it more transparent, efficient, and effective, to strengthen accountability mechanisms, and to improve its relationship with the General Assembly. In addition, Costa Rica has been vocal about the veto issue. For our country, we cannot support a proposal to extend new permanent members' veto rights. This proposal contradicts the principle of sovereign equality for the member nations and the imperatives of democratization, efficiency, and transparency that should guide the reform of the Council. For our country, the goal should be to regulate, limit, and eventually eliminate the veto power. In fact, for several years now, Costa Rica has proposed that permanent members should abstain from vetoing on issues such as genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and massive human rights violations, as was proposed initially by the Small Five group and now has been presented by France with its proposed code of conduct for the use of the veto power. Within the framework of the first committee, Costa Rica's priorities will continue to be the following. Costa Rica is one of the 7 co-authors of the Arms Trade Treaty and will continue to lead the process of its application as it takes effect. The preparatory process will happen this year, and the first conference of the states parties will be held on the first half of 2015. Costa Rica has been named president and host of the 5th meeting of states parties of the Convention on Cluster Munitions, CCM, that will be held in our country as of the next week from September 1st through the 5th. This will be the first meeting of the states parties that will be held in Latin America or the Caribbean, and the final one held before the first conference for the review of the convention in 2015. Therefore, Costa Rica's diplomatic officials consider this meeting as an ideal opportunity to begin evaluating achievements and identify continuing challenges for the full application of this convention. Our goal is to continue integrating the efforts made by the international community to prohibit and eliminate completely cluster munitions. Therefore, the full implementation of this convention is essential to achieve a world free of cluster munitions. The immediate reaction of states to civilian casualties and an increased member states throughout the regions of the world should have undersigned the convention will contribute to the effective stigmatization of the existence and use of cluster munitions. As such, Costa Rica will encourage any effort that helps every country to join this convention. Likewise, we also hope that the growing community of states parties will take full advantage of all possible forms of cooperation, including South-South and triangular cooperation as mechanisms to develop the collective and constructive implementation of the Convention, which effectively supports the application of all elements of these international instruments. In the hope of making this Convention universal, Costa Rica calls upon the states in the region to make Latin America and the Caribbean an area free of cluster munitions. In regards to reduction in excessive military spending, our country, as a small, democratic, disarmed, and civil nation, believes in the multilateral system and international law as its only defense mechanisms. For Costa Ricans, the main tool to promote and guarantee national and international security are strengthening and perfecting democracy and promoting the respecting the rule of law. Even though we are a demilitarized country, Costa Rica still understands legitimate concerns about security and defense that other countries may have and their need to incur military expending, as justified by the amount and reasonability of the expenses. What Costa Rica questions is excessive military spending, which becomes a barrier to development and a driver of conflict. Therefore, we insist on the need to make progress from antiquated security doctrines based on strictly military paradigms to those that are essentially based on paradigms of human development and security. Nuclear weapons. On September 26, 2014, the United Nations General Assembly will hold a high-level meeting on nuclear disarmament, in which high-level officials will meet for the second time in history to discuss the topic of nuclear disarmament exclusively. Costa Rica will give a presidential speech in representation of CELAC. In September 2014, the 8th Conference on Measures to Facilitate the Entering into Effect of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, CTBT, will be held. For Costa Rica, the treaty is a fundamental element of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament around the world and complements the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The conference to review the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty will take place in 2015. Despite being a key instrument in strengthening international peace and security, the treaty continues to face many challenges. The most important challenges to Costa Rica are, on the one hand, the step-by-step approach that has failed to result in reaching the treaty's goals. This approach also has not led to the implementation of the CTBT or the requirement to eliminate nuclear weapons. In addition, and on the other hand, the lack of full implementation of the 2010 Action Plan with 13 practical steps for nuclear disarmament that were agreed in the 2000 review conference, among others, continue to impede achievement of the treaty's main objective. Costa Rica forms part of the group of Friends of Mediation, the main promoter of the United Nations General Assembly resolution entitled, quote, "to promote the use of mediation in the peaceful settlement of disputes, conflict prevention, and resolution," adopted on July 28, 2011. The group responds to the need to have states make efforts in preventive diplomacy, or in other words, in those diplomatic measures that are taken as soon as possible to avoid the rise of disputes among two or more parties, to avoid that dispute turn into conflicts, or, if there are conflicts, to avoid that they extend for long periods of time. Finland and Turkey are the two countries that have led this mechanism. It is important for Costa Rica to continue participating actively in this group, since it contributes to the creation of alliances with similar countries and the creation of commitment to use mediation. Likewise, the country's participation creates alliances with international entities and civil society. Costa Rica will continue to support this initiative and the governmental work that has been done along with the efforts that have been made by the Peace University and the mechanism for conflict resolution and mediation created by the Fundación Áreas para la Paz y el Progreso Humano. Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and Post-2015 Agenda. Currently, Costa Rica is also working actively on the topics of MDGs, the SDGs, and the Post-2015 Agenda. Due to the relevance of these topics in our country, the Interinstitutional Commission was formed, led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Planification, to define national priorities for the negotiation of the Sustainable Development Goals and Post-2015 Agenda. Human Rights Council re-election of Costa Rica. We are convinced that the work being done by the Human Rights Council and its mechanisms significantly contribute to improving human rights around the world. Therefore, Costa Rica promotes its re-election in the Human Rights Council for the 2015-2019 period, as well as other practical proposals to improve the Council's efficiency and capacity to prevent and respond to in a timely fashion to human rights violations. Administrative and budgetary issues. With respect to UN's administrative and budgetary issues, Costa Rica will continue to promote the efficient use of resources and greater budgetary discipline and rigor through meticulously scrutiny of the UN's administrative duties, the identification of possible savings, efficient expending, and the use of transparency mechanisms. International Criminal Court. Costa Rica has always participated actively in the state's parties' assemblies and other meetings held during the year at the International Criminal Court. Therefore, we will participate actively in the stages prior to the celebration of the 13th Assembly that will be held in December 2014, both in the preparatory negotiations on the different resolutions that will be presented in the plenary, including the Omnibus resolution and the resolutions on cooperation, complementary actions, budget, victims, and affected communities, as well as in the coordination and informative meetings on topics of complementary actions, amendments, victims, governance, and universalization, among others. I have allowed myself to share these elements of foreign policy at the multilateral level, particularly at the United Nations. I'm sure many of these issues are already familiar to you, and I'm also sure that you will be ambassadors for world peace, working for the benefit of your own countries from international organizations or from NGOs. I wish you all a comprehensive academic and cultural learning experience, but I also invite you to enjoy the unique natural surroundings of this wonderful campus, an ideal place that promotes deep inspiration. Choose love and hope. Thank you very much.